Gracious Creator, the cornerstone lies in the northeast corner, between the north, the place of darkness, and the east, the place of light. Thus it reminds us that we are ever to be progressing from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge. This week's episode of the Cornerstone podcast is the second part of a three-part series presented by Worshipful Brother Douglas Evans III, Grand Historian of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, on the history of Freemasonry in Atlanta metro area. In this second part, Brother Evans discusses the origin of several Masonic publications.
Anybody know the name of the first black newspaper in Atlanta? Well, not the Daily World. Daily World was 1928. Anybody seen the movie Color Purple? Okay. When the movie start, that time the movie start, the opening scene had Danny Glover in the movie reading the newspaper. All right. If y'all go back and watch that, that's the Atlanta Independent. That newspaper started in 1903. That was the only black newspaper, and that newspaper was started by a black millionaire named Benjamin Davis. Davis was a Prince Hall Mason, but he was also the leader of the Odd Fellows. Now, nobody asked the question, why was the first lodge in Atlanta named St. James? Okay. The first fraternal order in Atlanta was called St. James Good Samaritans. And the St. James also had a lodge called Odd Fellows. So St. James in 1871 was the third St. James fraternity, but it was the biggest one. Up until that time, we were in the Odd Fellows, but it really wasn't as big as the Masons. Benjamin Davis started his newspaper to put out the Odd Fellows business, but it started just dealing with everything in the community. The Masons was so important to the community that we had a section in the newspaper. And this is what I copied. And as you can see, it says the Freemasons Column. And in here they talking about different Masons in the community. They may talk about Brother Hobson's little girl's ballet recital. They might talk about Brother Thomas' little boy being born. This is something that for some reason we're not doing now. We're not in the media anymore like we used to. But I did want to show you all, particularly the sisters, here at the bottom where it says Gate City Royal Ark Chapter. That was in 1905, I believe. They mentioned after that, Arena Chapter, the Order of the Eastern Star, meets second and fourth Tuesday. Meeting and probably changed. And down here, Gate City Chapter, Order of the Eastern Star, meets first and third Tuesday. The same thing was with the Shriners. The same thing was with the 32nd degree Mason. Anything we did, we put it in print. So the community didn't have to ask, what are the Masons doing? They could read about it. All right?
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
When did they stop printing that? When did the column...
The Atlanta Independent went under after the Great Depression. That's when 1933 it went under. That's when the Daily World became the only black newspaper. Brother Coffee had a question. Before I get his question, well, go ahead. You asked me something upstairs about
what was the first lodge in Georgia?
All right.
Main Street in.
Anybody know the first lodge in Georgia? Everybody should. Okay. All right. Now, for y'all who don't know, Savannah was the history center for everything. Anybody know why that is? It's on the board. Perfect set. Now, do anybody know why Georgia was founded? And that would answer your question. Because in school they tell you that it was a buffer colony to protect the folk from South Carolina who were the real slaveholders. The real plantation holders in South Carolina. And Georgia protected South Carolina from the invasion of Spanish from Florida. That's not why they started Georgia. They started Georgia at the Grand Lodge session in London in 1733. the Masons decided they had a lot of debt. And they wanted to erase their debt by cultivating the land of Georgia. So Georgia was a Masonic invention by the white Masons of England. So they sent overlords over to survey the land and to set up King Solomon's Lodge, number 1. Okay? And what you will find in all the 13 colonies, they did not exist until they set up a Masonic Lodge first. Okay? So Georgia was set up at the same time they started the first Masonic Lodge in 1733. Alright? Lodge was officially charged in 1734. And they debating whether that's the oldest lodge in America. So, Masonry for white folks started in Savannah, just like Masonry for us started with Eureka Lodge when James Sims started it after the Civil War. And that's only because before the Civil War there was no Masonry in the black community. But the minute the Civil War ended, 1866, we chartered Eureka Lodge. Then we chartered Hilton Lodge and Banneker Lodge. Those 3 lodges, Brother Coffee, is how we started Georgia Grand Lodge, 1870. So Savannah is the birthplace of Masonry for Georgia. That's what. All right. Any other questions on that? All right. No other questions on that. Good. All right. We're gonna walk around the corner, then we're gonna head to Dodge Plaza.
I got a question. I actually.
All right. Okay, hold that. Hold that.
The Cornerstone podcast is produced by Charles Thomas, Daryl Hobson. Show notes from this episode of The Cornerstone can be found at www.wcthomas112.org/The Cornerstone. For questions or comments regarding The Cornerstone, please send emails to thecornerstone.podcast@gmail.com. Join the Cornerstone Google group if you would like to discuss this or any other topic from the podcast. The producers of the Cornerstone podcast would like to thank the host, James Glisson II. Music provided by Audio Jungle.